This was the best reading year I've ever had. I had so many five-star reads, they couldn't all make it into this video. So without further ado, let's get into my best books of 2025. I decided to keep it to 10. I was like, I could just do all the 5 stars, but I feel like there's something special about like really curating it and making it fit a number. So I will link all of the vlogs where I talk about 5-star reads that are not mentioned in this video if you are curious what my other 5-star reads were. But I really wanted this to be the best of the best of the best. So, as per usual, I will be going from 10th favorite to number 1 favorite at the end of this video. I did not include rereads in this, and not that I reread a whole lot this year, but I did read some Sally Rooney's, and I did not include the ones that I reread. This list probably could change on different days. I think 1 would always be 1, but there could be some shifting based on the day that I'm filming this. But today, this is the order. So my 10th favorite book of the year was Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel about 2 high school boys who fall in love. There are 5 volumes currently out, I believe. I think there's a 6th volume that's coming out in 2026, and I have purchased volumes 2 and 3, but have not started them yet. So first thing I loved about this is that I finished it in one sitting, and that's one of my favorite reading experiences, just starting, getting a whole story, and enjoying it from beginning to end. I don't want to spoil anything in this, but this is a graphic novel, and I think the cover is a good example of the art style, which I found to be just beautiful, like so beautifully illustrated, lots of movement and details and like attention to all the little bits. The other thing I loved about this is I think this dealt with a lot of really difficult topics: bullying in high school, sexuality and coming out, falling in love for the first time and not knowing how to say that or express that. And I think it dealt with these things in such a poignant, beautiful way. Like it never felt simple or simplistic. There might not be a lot of words in this story, but it felt like a full immersive experience. I'm so excited to read the rest of this and see how the story develops for these two. And yeah, this was an absolute treat. Coming in at number 9, we have Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, which I tabbed the heck out of. I read this for my Reading Sally Rooney vlog where I read all of her published works, and I will link that in the description box if you're interested. This is about 2 female friends. They are in university, but they met in high school. One of them is named Bobby, and the other one is named Frances. And one night they go to a poetry reading. Frances is very into like poetry, spoken word, so they go there, and they meet this like older. I think I want to say they're like in their 30s, 40s, a little bit older than the 2 girls. This older couple named Melissa and Nick, and Frances kind of takes a liking to Nick, and Bobby has a crush on Melissa. And so this is really the kind of muddled, interwoven relationship of these 4 people, how it's synergistic and maybe not so synergistic at other times. None of these people are particularly good at communicating with each other. Particularly Frances and Nick really struggle to say what they mean. But I think, and I feel this way whenever I read a Sally Rooney, I feel like she really has a finger on the pulse of modern relationships, modern love stories, not always having labels and things, not having traditional relationships. The complexity and the difficulty of deciding, what to be and who people are in their own right and who they are as a relationship. And I always feel like she does such a great job of discussing those topics, which are very muddled and difficult to discuss. Her writing is excellent. I always care so deeply about her characters. My favorite of hers is probably Normal People, although this was a very close second. Her newer releases I haven't enjoyed quite as much, but Conversations with Friends, and Normal People will always be favorites of all time for me. this was really, really incredible. In my Reading Sally Rooney vlog, I do talk all in detail about things, although non-spoilery. So if you want more of my very rambly thoughts, check that out. Coming in at number 8, we have my favorite thriller of the year, which was All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham, which kicked off my love of Stacey Willingham's whole work. This is about a woman named Isabel Drake, and 1 year ago, her infant son went missing in the middle of the night from his crib. We're now following her 1 year later as she is desperately trying to figure out where her son is and what happened, who took her son. She's going to true crime conventions. She can't sleep at night. She's sleuthing on her neighbors. She's just lost. And it's really about that journey of her figuring out what happened to her son. This follows her life now, obviously. It follows it in the past, her growing up. It takes place in the south of the United States, and the description and the eeriness of place is very present in here. This book is about motherhood. It's about maternal guilt. It's about how well we know ourselves and the people around us. And it was so absorbing. I could not put this book down. And that's why it's my favorite thriller of 2025. Next, we have Story of a Heart by Dr. Rachel Clark. I found out about this book because it was on the Women's Prize for Nonfiction. I think it won the prize, but I originally found out about it from the long list. And this is the story of one heart, two children, and written by a palliative care physician. This is very heartbreaking. It's nonfiction. I do have a full review, which I will link if you guys are interested. But basically, it follows this girl, Kira. She's 9 years old. She lives in Devon. And one day, her family is traveling on a perilous stretch of road in Devon, and they get in a head-on collision. Many members of the family are injured, but Kira, unfortunately, her heart stops at the scene. She's transported to a hospital, but she unfortunately is declared brain dead when she gets to the hospital. Her family makes the really difficult but very brave and incredible decision to donate Kira's organs, as her family thinks that's what Kira would have wanted. The other child that you're following is Max. He is 9, and he has been having some symptoms recently that people don't have a good reason for. So shortness of breath, tiredness, not being able to keep up with other children. And he originally is diagnosed with asthma, but then becomes sicker and sicker and is found to have a disease called dilated cardiomyopathy. Really, the only way that he will survive is if he gets a heart transplant. And so you might guess where this is going. Kira's heart gets donated to Max. So you're following both families and their stories, and also the healthcare workers that take care of both children. But you're also following like the history of the medical advancements that made this possible. So you kind of flash back into like the first organ transplantation, the first heart transplantation, how pediatric intensive care started. And it's all done with so much grace and sensitivity. You can tell that the person who's writing this, Dr. Rachel Clark, has dealt with similar situations before, as she is a palliative care doctor and so deals with chronic illnesses, people in life or death situations all of the time. And this was just absolutely stunning. Like, I think about this all the time, especially in my work in the hospital. I often think about Kira and Max's story. And of course, one of my favorite books of the year. Next, we have Brain on Fire by Susanna Cahalan. This is another medical memoir, so maybe I need to be reading more of those because 2 have made it into my top 10 of the year. So this is a memoir about Susanna's life. She was a New York Post reporter, I think. And she starts at the beginning of the story experiencing some weird symptoms. First off, it's like visual hallucinations. So she thinks that she sees insects like in her apartment in New York, but no one else sees them. And then it starts to progress and progress and progress. And eventually she's hospitalized for several weeks as doctors are desperately trying and sometimes not listening to her, but sometimes trying and doing a good job of figuring out why she's having these symptoms. you go through like the medical process of misdiagnosis, but it's all from her experience. Some of it is filled in by family members because she doesn't remember all of what she went through. But you kind of get a pretty well-rounded experience reading it from what her family members say. I thought that this did an excellent job of describing particularly the American healthcare system and the triumphs and the pitfalls of it, all which I am very familiar with, and written in such a good way. I highly, highly, highly recommend the audiobook, which Susanna Cahalan narrates, and I think it just gives like an extra personal touch. Of course, trigger warning in both of these books for illness, severe illness, death, being hospitalized, etc. Um, but yeah, this was really, really excellent. And I did learn a lot from this book, which I take with me every day. Next, we have a book that completely took me by surprise, but has a hold of my heart forever. And that is Careless by Kirsty Capes. So this is about a 15-year-old girl in London named Bess, and she's in the foster care system. She's currently with a foster placement. And despite all the people in her life that are caring for her and being in the care system and all these things, words surrounding care, she does not feel that. She feels forgotten, and she feels that she doesn't really have anybody that cares about her. And in return, the people around her think that her behavior is careless or destructive. At the beginning of the story, you learn that Bess is pregnant, and throughout the book, you flash back and see how this happened, who the boy was, all of those things, and then you kind of go back to the present and figure out what ends up happening. This was so propulsively readable. I picked this up kind of on a whim. It was on a women's prize long list several years ago. And I was like, I've had this on my shelf for a while. Why not pick it up? And I could not put it down. Like, I so deeply cared about Bess and what happened to her. The writing was just stunning. I love the description of friendship in here. Bess has one very, very close friend that kind of is with her through the whole way, her ride or die. I loved thinking about like who this book was written for. What genre is this in? What age group is this for? Because I think it was nuanced and a little murky, but I think that made it really interesting. I'm going to read everything that this author writes. She has a couple of other books out that I have not yet picked up, but I will be reading them soon because this was an absolute highlight for me. Next, we have Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolls. This is the book that started my love of his books and of his work. This is about, takes place in the 1920s in Russia, and we follow a count who is very wealthy. And at the beginning, he is placed on house arrest in the building he lives, which is the Metropole Hotel. But instead of his very extravagant suite, he has to go live in the attic there. And the reason why he is put on house arrest is because he has written a poem that the Bolshevik regime sees as challenging their rule. And so you follow him, the inner workings of the hotel, but you also, because of how central it is in Moscow and all the things that are happening at the time, he also gets this like fly on a wall experience of a lot of the prominent political events and political figures of the time. I loved the character work in here. The Count is just a fantastic character. He's a little snooty. He's very mischievous, but he has this, and also very pretentious, but he has this like heart and care for everybody around him. I told my mom about this when I was reading it. I was like, Mom, you are going to love this. You have to read this. And I got a message back from her the next day, and she was like, read the whole thing, favorite book of the year, right off the bat. And so then I desperately had to keep up so that I could like chat with her about it. I've also read Rules of Civility by Amor Tolls, which I really enjoyed, but gave 4.5 stars, and I didn't enjoy it quite as much as this one. I am eager to pick up The Lincoln Highway next, and I absolutely, absolutely love his writing. He's just such a standout author for me. All right, we're in the top 3, and coming in at number 3, we have a book that I will not shut up about, ever. And it is Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller. This is another book from the Women's Prize for Nonfiction. So there's been 2 nonfiction ones and a previous Women's Prize for Fiction longlister on this list. So maybe I should be listening to that. But this is a nonfiction book. It's a memoir about, of course, Lulu's life. So growing up, Lulu really struggled with her own mental health. And she took a lot of solace and inspiration from a scientist named David Starr Jordan. And the scientist was known for categorizing fish, collecting them, putting them in bottles. And the reason why Lulu looks up to him so much is his dedication, his drive to find these animals. And at one point, his collection shatters to the ground, and there's fish and water and everything, all the labels on the floor. And he painstakingly builds it up again. And she finds that so inspirational. But then the more she looks into this man, the more she realizes what dark secrets he really has and what type of person he really is. And as she discovers more about him, she has to reckon with changing her opinion about somebody. This is about self-discovery. It does have a lot, of course, of the science of it, but I never felt that it was overbearing. It has a little bit of a mystery true crime element to it. It has beautiful illustrations, etchings on each chapter, at the beginning of each chapter. And maybe the best end to a book that I've read all year, like the end of this book was chef's kiss, like perfect. And I literally, like, whenever I find out that someone else is a reader, one of the first questions I ask them is, have you read Why Fish Don't Exist? They're like, who are you? I'm like, read it. It's so good. So yes, absolutely love this book. Next, coming in at number 2, we have East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I read this when we flew out to Colorado. And this book has a piece of my heart and always will. It is about 2 families in the Salinas Valley in California at the turn of the into the 1900s. And the long saga throughout their lives, the interplay, the rivalries, the romances, all of the things. This has the best villain I've ever read in any book, ever. It is so unhinged. It has a really excellent sibling relationship, a brother relationship that I really enjoyed reading about. It's so emotionally complex. And at the end of this, I was crushed. I was just staring at the wall for maybe 45 minutes. And Tyler had to come check on me and was like, what is wrong? Are you okay? And I'm like, just read this. And he's like, I don't want to read 700 pages right now. And I'm like, okay, let me explain. I explained it to him. He understood why I was crushed. And I'm like still recovering from what this book did to my heart. It is chunky, but it never felt like there was a dull moment in here. The writing was stunning. I think this is a masterpiece in every possible way. And I need to read more Steinbeck, apparently. And my favorite book of the year. There was only ever going to be one. And I thought it was going to be this one the minute I flipped the last page. So I'm not totally surprised we're here. There have been many, many amazing books, but this one has always had like a huge part of my heart. And that is Foster by Claire Keegan. I did a whole vlog where I read Claire Keegan's all of her work. So if you're curious about what I thought of her other work, I will link you over there. I have enjoyed immensely many of her other works, but this one just has a huge piece of my heart. This was also a one sitting read. It is only 92 pages, and it feels fitting that my top 10 started with a one sitting read and ends with a one sitting read, but I would really recommend it to read the whole thing that way, because it just like it has this emotional resonance and this gripping quality, and I think getting all of the payoff in one read is the way to go. But it is about a young girl, and it is told from her perspective. And at the beginning of the story, her parents are having another child. Takes place in Ireland. And they already have a lot of children, and they don't really have a lot of resources in the home. And so they decide to have this young girl live with some relatives over the summer called the Kinsellas. And so she's essentially like fostered by them for the summer. And it's about the girl coming into her own, missing home, how she's kind of evolves into this family. The end is ambiguous and heartwarming and crushing at the same time. I love this is one of the best books I've ever read told from the perspective of a child. I think it does it so well and thinks about all of the nuances and like how everything would play out from a child's mind. And it feels really realistic in that way. Claire Keegan's writing is just this simple but beautiful, beautiful prose that just literally grabs your heart and tears it apart. So yeah, this is definitely in one of my favorite books of all time. Completely stunning. So my friends, those are my top books of 2025. Again, one of the best reading years, the best reading year I've ever had for sure. I hope 2026 can live up to it. A lot of pressure for 2026, but this was such a special year, and I wanted to take a moment to just thank you guys so much for joining in, for following along. I do read every comment. I do appreciate so much when people reach out to me, give me recommendations, watch my videos, reach out to me on Instagram. Like, it really means the world to me. So thank you guys so much. And if you made it to the end of this video, leave me the 100 emoji because I feel like all of these books are 100 in my heart. Keep it 100. And with that, I will see you guys very soon with another video. Bye.